Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Inside Wayzata podcast. Today, we are talking about parenting and caregiving for young humans. We have with us today Naomi Husso, who is a licensed parent educator at the Wayzata Early Learning School. She's been there for 9 years, and she is going to solve all of my parenting challenges today.
I'm not going to solve them all, but I'll give you some ideas.
I have been telling people this is a very selfish episode that I'm doing today. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old at home, and for those listening that have young kids or know young kids or work with young kids, like they know like this is challenging. So I want to start there. It's more of like a statement for people that are listening and they're overwhelmed and whatever else comes with caring for young kids. Parenting's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. The hardest job you'll ever have with the least amount of training.
So the hope today is we've kind of gone through and identified some main themes or topic areas of parenting and caregiving for young kids, and Naomi's going to help give us some strategies, advice, wisdom, help us kind of work through some of these things. So we're going to start with the big one, behavior and discipline. How do we navigate constant toddler tantrums and figure out what exactly is my child trying to communicate?
That's the thing with tantrums is I always like to frame it back to like, where are they emotionally and where are they cognitively? If you think about how the brain develops, the emotional part of their brain is in the middle, and their prefrontal cortex, the front part of their brain, is where all of their decision making and reasoning and problem solving is coming in. And when we have big emotions, and I say we meaning all people have big emotions, our emotional brain really like flares up. And Dan Siegel kind of has the like flip your lid idea, where it's like the prefrontal cortex stops engaging and our emotions are driving the bus. If you look at brain science, prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until mid-20s currently is where research is at. And so when you're working with humans that are 12 months to 4.5, 5 years old, I mean, let's even elementary, middle school, high schoolers, their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. And so their emotions are fully taking over. And so one of my favorite quotes from Tina Bryson is looking at like, when our kids are at their worst is when they need us the most. We also have mirror neurons in our brain where when our kids are having a tantrum or having an emotional reaction, it causes an emotional reaction in us. And so it's this balance of like, how do I check my emotions and make sure that I'm calm and collected so then I can share my calm with my child, or even just look at their emotion coming from like a place of curiosity. What is happening in your body and your brain that's creating you to have this response in this way? Sometimes it's logical. Sometimes it's incredibly illogical. Like my banana fell apart and you have to fix it. And that, you can't fix that. Like the banana is now in 2 pieces. It doesn't go back together.
It's all too real. We had one last night. Our 2-year-old, my wife rinsed his apple.
Oh, why would you?
Well, no, it's actually the other way. So she rinsed it and then dried it. And he was upset that there was no water droplets left on the apple.
Yeah.
Full blown, like, collapse on the floor.
Yes.
Why is there no longer water on my apple? And trying to figure out, like, what are you saying through all the screaming. And then we're like, do you just want more water back on the apple? And he's, yes. And you put water back on, and through tears, he then starts eating the apple. But it's just like, it was just so funny.
And I think those are the moments where it's like, this is dinner time.
Yes.
And so like, that's the other piece too, is you have little people who have huge feelings, and then we get to the end of the day. And for most of us, the biggest feelings are coming at the end of the day or right around like meal and rest time, because our basic needs of like being fed, being tired, or if I've been at daycare all day or in school all day and I've been holding myself emotionally together for all these people that they're safe people, but they're not my people. All of a sudden we get home and we're with our parents or like primary caregivers, like, here is all my great emotions. Good luck with them. Hang on for this ride. And it's so hard because we also have had a long day. Whether you're a working parent or whether you're a parent who stays home with your child all day, the end of the day is always the hardest part because everyone is tapped out. And sometimes it truly is just like looking at your child screaming on the floor and going, okay, first of all, how do I get you calm enough to communicate why you're losing your mind? And then you said it, like, do you want water back on your apple? I can fix that. I'll put it underneath the sink again. Or even when you can't fix it because the banana's in two, just simply saying like, oh, that is not how you wanted this to be.
Yes, you're like acknowledging.
You're acknowledging it, but also we have this like need in parenting right now where it's like we need it to be perfect, and it is everything but perfect. But also the world isn't perfect, and it's this balance of like your emotions are real, and I totally get it, and I can validate them, but like I can't fix all of the problems. And if I fix all of your problems, I'm not setting you up for life because one day I'm not going to fix your problems.
Yeah. So it feels like there's this balance of obviously water on an apple is a pretty simplistic, like there's not a lot riding on what we decide to do in that situation, right? But there are situations when tantrums are real, and I think there's also this need to, and this want to, like, okay, we do need to have boundaries. So what is the balance of we want to support their feelings but also maintain boundaries? I think that's probably the hardest part, right?
Yeah. And the hard part is we have so much information coming at us at one time. I sit in classes all the time and have parents sharing like, I'm feeling overwhelmed with how much information is at my fingertips and what do I do with it? And I think that's a really challenging part of parenting right now is some of us may have been very validated in our feelings growing up from our own caregivers. A lot of parents maybe didn't feel that from their caregivers growing up. And so it's this balance of like, first of all, I have to be okay with emotions. And for some of us, we're learning to be okay with emotions as adults so we can help our kids be okay with emotions. And so it starts with validating. I'm validating to the best of my knowledge how you're feeling right now. Because right now I have no idea what you're feeling, but I can take a guess.
I'm sorry you're upset that we dried the water off the apple.
You're really upset that the water's off the apple. And like, you can apologize or you're just like, you look really sad right now. You're really disappointed right now. I think too, kind of a sidetrack, but like building our kids' emotional vocabulary, there's a ton of really good information out there right now on like the research of why building their vocabulary around emotions at an early age serves them not only as kids, but even as like mental health as adults. Being able to figure out how we're feeling and tell people how we're feeling helps us long term. And so it starts with us as a caregiver, as a parent. You seem, you feel, you look, I hear, you're making a guess. The nice thing is as your kids get older, the more vocabulary they have, the more they can tell you whether you're right or wrong, for good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
And then we can move from there.
Yeah.
If they're upset about something and we have a boundary, like it's time to leave the park and you don't want to leave, acknowledging like leaving the park is hard. You're feeling like you're not done playing, but we have to go home and make dinner. I'm validating the feeling, but also I'm not changing the boundary. We need to go home and make dinner. Your feelings are valid. It is now time for us to leave the park. This is where some research is coming in and showing that like choice offering is really helpful in those situations where it's like, you can be the one to make the choice of how we get to the car or get home. Are you going to have the autonomy to pick your body up and move it towards the direction we need to go? Or am I the caregiver, your helper? And I'm going to help you get to where we need to go, even if that means you're kicking and screaming and having a really hard time. I gave you your choice. Yeah. I gave you a minute to process. Kids process so much slower than adults. And this is important for all interactions with kids. Their process time is so much slower.
Them to like, I feel like that's one thing we struggle with is we have more urgency that they're capable of having, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked you the question and I expect you to respond right now.
Yeah.
Where their brain is still processing language and like decision making and all the things so much lower than ours. Say it, let it sink in, and give them their choices.
Yeah.
And then count to 10 in your head before you do anything, which is the hardest part, especially when you like, we set timers in our house. Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to set the timer. And when the timer is up, it's not me, it's the timer telling you it's time to leave. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then it's like, well, I want 2 more minutes. Do I give you 2 more minutes? Do I not give you 2 more minutes? It depends on the situation. But this idea of like, you can have the choice in this situation. Either you can walk on your own or I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
This works for only so long because you get to a point where it's like, I can't physically pick you up anymore. And then we get to a different area and a different territory. But this idea of like giving them autonomy within the boundaries. Yeah. And when they don't follow through, you follow through, because we want our kids to know that like, I care about how you feel. I validate how you feel, but my boundary is here for a reason and your feelings are valid, but they're not going to change my mind.
Yeah.
It is so quick to like just give in to the feeling because we just want it to stop. And it's usually when we're feeling rushed.
So that's the emotional reaction from us, right? Yeah. So if we're going to give an example, you can like grade me. So we're at the park. It's time to go home. And our 4-year-old, he clearly doesn't want to go home. So I would say, I hear that you want to keep playing at the park. You want to have, you're not done playing yet. I can either help you get to the car or the stroller, or you can walk there yourself. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah.
It's like giving them the, okay.
And if you can, try and give them like their autonomy piece first. Would you like to be the one to get to the car on your own, or do you need my help? Because the big thing is like, we want to give them autonomy.
Yeah.
And this is tricky. Like autonomy is really, there's a lot of research why it is so incredibly important for kids, but we're living in a world where we're terrified to let our kids out of our sight. And so thinking about like giving them as much opportunity to do things for themselves before we jump in, because they need to feel, number one, that success of like, I did it myself. And number two, that control over their body. I had a parent a long, long time ago in a class come to me one day and he's like, I figured out the secret to parenting. And I was like, please share. And he goes, it's a war and we have to like pick and choose our battles. And I was like, in a way, yes. Like there's going to be a lot of power struggles that happen between us and our kids. And it's really thinking about like, how are we helping them move forward in life and helping them along the way take on their own responsibilities to be a contributing adult in the world who can do things for themselves, but also have like the whereabouts of knowing when I need help.
Yeah. So the more opportunities you give them to make these decisions, the better, right? Even though like what I was going to ask you is, all right, so we've all been in the situation at the park when it's time to go. Would you like to walk yourself to the stroller, or would you like me to carry you? And we get like the defiant, like, I don't like either of those options. I'm going to keep playing. I think that's where, in my mind, that's when the emotional reaction kicks in from us, right? Like we're like, all right, we're going to do this right. We're going to do, we've listened to the Inside Wayzata podcast and we know the trick here. And then it all falls apart because they're like, no, I'm not done playing. Then what?
This is the boundary.
Yeah.
And this is the part where it gets messy and you kind of have to figure out like in this situation, where is the best direction I can go. But sometimes we rephrase what we just said or just restate it in the same way. And then we just say, it looks like you're going to need a helper right now. And I'm going to come help you. The tricky part, and I don't have perfect answers for this, and this is where my wonderful oldest comes into play, is like they take off running. And I'm like, great, now I'm chasing you and this is not going well. I always tell parents in my classes, I am not a perfect parent. I do all the things against what I say to parents, and then I have to stop, pause, and think about like, okay, how do I help my child in this situation? Because I parent out of emotion sometimes too. Yeah. And so thinking about like, when you have the kid running away at a playground in a public space, you got to come with me, and I'm going to have to figure out how to safely get you to the car or to the wagon or to the stroller. Thing, right? It's a safety thing at that point. And then sometimes too, once they're calm later on and we've had that terrible experience of leaving the park with the screaming 4-year-old who you feel very embarrassed if there's anybody else there watching you. That's where, like, once they're calm and we are far beyond removed from the situation, this could be at bedtime, this could be the next day. The beautiful thing about, like, the preschool age and above is they have the memory to, like, go back and re-talk about things that happened. And so revisiting that, like, yesterday or earlier today at the park, you really didn't want to leave. You took off running. What did you feel in that situation? Like, getting their feedback on how it felt out of the emotional piece and also sharing your perspective. That's an opportunity to problem solve for future park things. It might work next time. It might not.
Yeah.
Sometimes sprinkling some very well-intended reminders.
Yeah.
When we go to the park, like when I say it's time to leave, this is what we need to do. But also they're humans. Yeah. We want little people to be robots that we like program, but they're humans with their own feelings and their own thoughts. And that gets complicated.
Yeah. So the circling back piece, I think is interesting because, for us, it's had like hit or miss success, right? There's sometimes you circle back to it and they are just kind of like staring blankly at you, or like, I just want to read a book, or I want to play like this. But it is interesting. It does, if anything, it always makes me feel better. Because you can kind of like, it feels like you're addressing it in a calm way, which feels like something we all need more of, is that calm. So walking us through that piece, is it, all right, so you're asking them how they felt in that moment, and then, they're going to say whatever, right? But then for you, you're then explaining to them how you felt at that moment. In
as simple words as possible. We talk too much.
When you ran away, I felt scared. Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because then we want to go into an explanation.
Yeah.
We want to go down like a whole lecture of what was happening in our brain and all the things that we
need to listen, because at that point they're checked out.
Also, like, humans don't like being called out on you. Like, we're so quick to say you statements, you did this, you did that. It made
you're right. That's not a kid thing either.
That's not a kid thing. That's a people thing. Yeah. And they are just young humans learning how to be humans.
Yeah.
And so thinking about how do we say like the I statements on how I felt in that situation, and then inviting them to chime in when they're able and wanting to. And if they don't want to, they don't want to. That's where I love children's books. This is the age where you can find a children's book on most topics. In our house, we have lots of books about different feelings and emotions. And then we have like books that talk about different emotion words. My daughter went through a really good hitting phase, and I was like, great, so let's get some books on why we don't hit people and what we do instead. Sometimes it's a lot easier to talk about somebody else's feelings and emotions than it is to talk about our own.
Yeah.
It feels vulnerable when it's us being put on blast.
That's great. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit. How do we handle discipline? And obviously that varies by age, right? What are some positive discipline strategies, if they exist, for working through some of these hard toddler situations?
Yeah. The list of discipline strategies is like a million miles long. And I always like to tell parents, like, we have a toolbox when we're parenting. And when we have our toolbox, there's different tools that work in different situations. And so it's really navigating what tool is going to work for me in this moment. If my child is having a very hard time getting on a jacket and it's cold outside, how much time are we going to be outside from, like, what's the need level of this jacket? To put my own parenting on blast this morning, getting my 20-month-old dressed and ready to go was really challenging, and we were running late. So in my head, the walk from our back door to the car and from the car to daycare's front door was short enough with the weather outside that I had the shoes in one hand, the jacket in one hand, and the kid.
Yep.
No socks, no shoes, no jacket.
We've all been there.
But he was safe because I was outside for 30 seconds and it's not -50 outside. So that natural consequence. This comes in play with the older kids who are getting on the bus, where it's like, I don't need my jacket. Send the jacket with them. Make sure they have what they need when they decide to do it. But this is where natural consequences sometimes come into play, where it's like, if you learn just by simply the situation, like, how does that work? And so natural consequences is a good one that I like. Also just redirecting the behavior, like validating the feeling, setting the boundary, and just redirect. The younger age group is really nice to redirect, and it's a really good strategy to use because they can get on to something different. Like if they're constantly hitting the cat or the dog, pick them up, scoop them up, move them to a different part of the house and help them engage in a different toy that's filling that need. Figure out what the need is and give them a different alternative on how to do that. Or in some situations with some behaviors, our kids are just overstimulated and they really just need us to get them out of that situation and help them calm down. Timeouts is a really tricky behavioral thing because it's very popular, but the actual like way and execution and like the way timeouts take place in different families is so different.
Yeah.
And really thinking about like when our children are having big emotions, they need an adult to help them regulate those emotions. Some kids really need that like warm, comforting, like contact way to calm down. Some kids don't want you to touch them when they're angry, but we need to be close by so that they know that we are there as a support if they need it. And so timeouts are effective when we are still with them in some way. There's wavering. There's a ton of different research on both sides of timeouts, but the idea of like, go to your room because you're misbehaving and I don't want to deal with you right now.
Like you're isolating
I'm
them.
isolating you is not teaching them how to regulate emotions and really work through the problem. And so thinking about like how in my family, knowing my child's temperament, how do I help them calm down so we can work through the problem? We're really trying to like solve the problem. Discipline by definition is to teach our kids. We often put discipline and punishment in the same thought. And we want our kids to learn through punishments. Punishments don't teach them anything. It just teaches them to either avoid that behavior or hide it so that you don't know. So they are getting out of the punishment.
Right. They're not avoiding it from the standpoint of like learning that this was wrong. It's just they don't want to be in this situation again, and they're going to find a way to avoid it somehow.
Yeah. I'm going to hide this from you so that I don't get punished for it versus like letting them feel. The other thing with that too, which is interesting, I'm currently at the U of M finishing my master's in parent and family education. And so this semester I've been looking at a lot of research and looking at a lot of information on a variety of topics. But what I think is really interesting is like we want to find ways to help our kids navigate and figure out how to help them take the steps through life and giving them as much control as we can and letting them feel what it feels like when they make a mistake. My daughter the other day got mad at me and she threw something and it broke. And you could just see the look on her face when she was just like, I didn't expect that to happen. I feel really big emotions about that. And I have really big feelings about that. And I didn't say it's okay. Like I was there to comfort her, but I wanted her to feel that weight of like, that thing is broken now. And that was because of a behavior and a really just knee-jerk reaction that she had in that moment. Her feelings took over and she threw it, which is normal for kids to throw things when they're upset, and just like let her feel it. Or when our older kids have like, they hit their sibling or do something that hurts somebody else's body, we have this like need to make their guilt go away, but rather like letting them sit in that guilt a little bit and feel what that feels like. Because that in and of itself is way more impactful in guiding their behavior in the future than it is to like lecture them on why what they did was wrong.
I think that's a good example that, had on the list, right, is, especially if there's multiple siblings, there's a lot of opportunities for interaction. And that can be, as we all know, positive and cute and all the things, right? But then there's the moments of, our 4-year-old goes and just kind of steamrolls or smacks our 2-year-old. In those moments, and like you said, every kid's a little different, but what's a good baseline for us when, 4-year-old goes over, smacks a 2-year-old, now what?
Depending on the situation, in that situation, first of all, curiosity of like what's happening. Even just stating like, I saw somebody hit somebody else. Why did that happen? If the child is actually hurt, like go to the hurt child first. Always go to the hurt child first. But thinking about like sibling dynamics are really tricky because sometimes it's better to just let them work it out to some degree, but we don't want to let siblings like actually continually hurt each other because that doesn't help their relationship. But it's this balance of like, how much is too much? Going to them and trying to be like, somebody hurt somebody and I'd like to figure out what's going on. Come at it as the mediator. I'm the mediator in this situation and we're going to try and figure out what's going on. Younger ages, we have to help them and guide them and show them the right way to do it. Older siblings were looking for like information. Like, did something happen? It's very possible that either the younger sibling had a toy that they wanted.
I was just about to say, it always seems like it's centered around an object, right?
Yes, it's always an object.
And I think that's, you're saying this and it's kind of clicking in my head of when you try to, intervene in whatever way, it's a lot of the older sibling has a little more, they understand how to use their body more for whatever reason, manipulative or not. And then it's always like when they smack their younger sibling, it's then this like, well, so-and-so took XYZ from me. So that they kind of, I think the idea of mediating it is interesting.
Really mad. You were holding that toy and your younger brother came up and took it from you. And that made you really mad. Look at your brother's face. He's feeling really sad. And when you hit him, that really hurt his body. And now he's crying. If your brother has a toy, what's a different way you can get the toy without hurting his body? Where I'm like, I'm empathetic to how you're feeling. This takes a moment of like collecting yourself before you go do this. Because usually when you see an older child, and we always take the younger kid's side. Because they're the baby and the older kid is left. And
we have higher expectations, right?
We do. Yeah. And they're usually unrealistic. Yeah. Usually we have this idea that just because they're older, they now have reached this cognitive ability that they can do all of these great, amazing problem-solving things, and they can't. Mm-hmm. But like checking your own emotions. And if you can't check your own emotions, just get over there and then start your own deep breathing and like whatever your mantra is to check yourself. And then try and be curious. It's trying to be curious to get more information because 90% of the time when this happens, we didn't see it. We heard it. Mm-hmm. And when we do see it, we just narrate what we saw.
So it seems like what we're trying to do is get in these situations, you want to, at whatever sibling it is, you want them to start generating awareness of how their actions impact others, right?
Exactly.
And if we go back to like, the timeout approach, by removing them, you're removing them almost from those opportunities to learn that impact in a way. Is that kind of the theory?
And we have this idea of like, you're going to go sit in the timeout spot and you're going to think about what you did for however many years, a minute for each year you have. And we're under this impression that they're thinking about what they did. They're not self-reflecting. They self-reflect with an adult's help. They're just thinking about how mean you are for throwing them in there and not hearing their side of the story.
Or they've already like moved on to the next.
Or they've already moved on and they're trying to escape from timeout because they're having a very different emotional response.
Right.
And so thinking about like, I have lots of families who use timeouts and they feel like they work. And I am my biggest message to parents is we're building your toolbox and then you know your child, you know your family best, you know your values.
Yeah.
And anything that's ever shared in the parenting world that doesn't fit your family values and what you're trying to teach your kids shouldn't be used in your home because it doesn't match what you're trying to teach.
Right.
And so take pieces that work and leave the pieces that don't. And when you're at the point where you're like, this is no longer working for me, that's where we go looking for more information. Inundated with information. You find it everywhere. As
we kind of put a bow on like the behavior and discipline section, there's situations where I think one thing we see a lot is this kind of, it almost feels like a wind up of like this building of, and I think a lot of it, like you said, kind of comes with the time of day, like end of the day, we're either hungry, we've had a big day of trying to navigate the world. And we're like, it almost feels like one of those toys where you wind them up and they get home and now they're doing whatever the toy is supposed to do. Is there ever situations, and I don't know if I'd call it like a timeout, but it's more of like, we need some space to just kind of bring it down a level.
There's like decompression time. There's connection time. A lot of times our kids are looking for connection. Their behaviors are a way of trying to connect with us. This is a totally different tangent for a whole different situation, but like the basic needs approach that the district's taking right now, we're looking at like the 5 basic needs, figuring out like what need is my child meeting with their behavior. And again, that's a whole nother conversation that could be saved for a different time. But that idea of like, why are you behaving this way and what do you need right now? And how do I help you with that? Knowing that like this time of day is hard for us always. What is something that we can factor in to help? Like if you get home and your child is melting because they're starving, but it's dinner time and you still have to make dinner, what is the snack, quote unquote, that's available in this moment so that you stop screaming at my ankles that you're hungry, but also won't ruin your dinner? And so figuring out like what does that mean for your family? Yeah. In my house, that means you stand on your learning tower while I'm cooking in front of you and you get the vegetable that's happening for the night. Whether you choose to eat that or not is your own choice. It's not my choice. But I have given back to your choices. I have provided you with something to eat. Yeah. My daughter uses the term, I want something to gnaw on. And I was like, okay, here is your opportunity.
Better this vegetable than your sibling,
right? Like, here's your opportunity. And so thinking about, like, how do we set them up? I also, too, like, going back to, like, the timeout piece or, like, time ins, this idea of, like, how do we set up spaces in our home that are a part of the, like, normal space that we're in that has quieter, more calming activities. The idea of like a calming corner, which is used a lot in our preschool classrooms, is something easily utilized in the home. And I can send links and link stuff, like resources, but like, how do you create a calming space in your home? Like what toys help your child? And toys meaning non-battery operated, non-screen things to reset their bodies. Usually it's soft items like stuffed animals or books or fidgets or things that like help them reset, and trying to figure out like when you have a problem area that's constant, figuring out how do we target that area and rethink this part of our routine to make it work better for us.
And I suppose there's this piece of you don't want to make, like if every time there's misbehavior, we send them to their room. Well, now there's this association with their room as like, this is where I go, and they might not know why necessarily, but this is where I go, and they view it as like a punitive thing, right? So then it's harder to use that space as, you know, a calming area because the only time they go there is when mommy or daddy or whoever is yelling at them, right?
Yep. And that's why like the biggest thing about learning and teaching and a lot of these skills is like it happens when they're calm. We try and teach new things when they're upset versus like teaching them when they're calm. And so if you have this like calming space in your home, and the real idea behind it is like somewhere that they can still see you, but can also take a break and get away. Like if they eventually, so you have this space, you have this like box of toys or whatever, and you teach them what's in there when they're calm, you figure out and kind of tell them what this is and what its intended purpose is. And then you can ask them if they want to go step over there and help, like to take a minute. And if they don't, that's fine. But also like if they're over there and their siblings coming in and bothering them, that's a great opportunity to let the sibling know, like, it looks like your brother needs time to himself right now. He's trying to take a break. I'm going to help you find something else so he can have that break. So I'm honoring when they're using it the way I want them to use it and preventing the other person from, and then we can always check in with them like, do you want my help or not?
So I think we can kind of segue into, you know, the social, emotional, some of those pieces. I feel like we touched on this a little, but when these huge feelings are happening, like we want to, like, I feel like the buzzword or buzz phrase is like, use your words. I feel like we need to collectively do better at like helping coach them through their feelings and like help build their vocabulary, as you mentioned, on like what those feelings are. So how do we go about, we'll call it emotional coaching?
It's so hard because we're always like, use your words, but their words are offline. Yeah. Especially the little ones. Like their words are gone now when they're emotionally dysregulated. And so it's really like co-regulate. Co-regulation is the key to most things, and like figuring out when they're in their storm, how do I help them weather it? I'm not trying to shorten it. I'm not trying, like, all I'm trying to do is be present and ready to help them through that. And it looks very different for each kid.
Before we move on, so when you say their words are gone, is that back to the brain science?
Yeah, it's back to the brain science. Yeah. When they are emotionally charged, they typically cannot get their words out. Some can. And when they can, try and figure out what it is they're trying to tell you. It depends on how dysregulated they are. I mean, some kids are only mildly dysregulated. They're still dysregulated and they still need that co-regulation piece. But if they can use their words, that's great. Sometimes when we want them to use their words, we can like face-to-face or body-to-body, taking deep breaths together and like doing it with them. In my household, I also often get yelled at that they don't want to take deep breaths. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to. I need to take some deep breaths and I will do it. And when they're ready, they join me. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's long. Tantrums can last a very long time. That's usually when we're like, okay, enough is enough. Like, be done with this now. But I think sometimes remembering that like they are humans and they're people, and we talk to them in a negative way versus like really being empathetic to how they're feeling in that moment. I mean, talk to kids the way you would want to be talked to by another adult, because they're learning to be adults. Not yet. They're learning how to just be people. But like the more we can model the behaviors we want, the easier it is for them to connect with it.
I think so if we were to summarize that, it's the best strategy to start with is modeling the behavior.
Mm-hmm. If you're yelling at your child to calm down, it's probably a good time to like stop and calm down yourself.
Yep.
That's usually when my brain kicks in and goes, you should probably practice what you're telling people.
So true.
When I'm just like, and now I'm yelling. No one is gonna get through this if I don't stop.
All right, let's move through a few like specifics of social emotional development. So separation anxiety. Where do we start with that?
You have created this bond with this little person and they know that you are safe and you're gonna meet all of their needs. And learning to trust other adults can be hard. It's a developmental shift that they go through at varying times throughout their first couple of years of life. And each child's temperament plays a role in how they separate. And so it's not just one thing. The biggest thing about separation is when we can prepare them ahead of time for what's going to happen. And there's a lot of different tools we can use to prepare them. The easiest tool that requires nothing is just talking about it. If you have the opportunity, like you're starting a new school or something, show them if you can. Go bring them there. Show them what they're going to do. Talk about what they're going to do. And then when it comes time, you can do this before too, and actually it'd be better to do it before. But like start creating a goodbye ritual that you and your child have that's special. It's something quick. A big hug. I love you. I'll see you after class. And then we say goodbye. We turn around and we go. The hardest thing about separation is our child has big feelings and they're having big emotional responses. And I just got done saying how we have to be responsive to that and like help them and support them. But when it comes to separation, the hope is that we're leaving them with people that we trust. Or if you've never met these teachers before, finding ways to like be okay with it and know that like I signed up for this class for a reason. They're going to be okay. And so when we say goodbye and we walk out the door and we don't turn around, even when our child is having a hard time, that signals to our child in a nonverbal way that I trust the people I'm with and I'm going to come back when I said I was going to come back. We have to come back when we say we're going to come back.
It's almost like a confidence thing.
It's a confidence thing. And then it's practice and repetition. Kids learn in a cyclical fashion. They need things repeated over and over and over again, whether it's the words we use or the behaviors that we have. But the more we like stick to what we say and practice it, the easier it gets for them. I always tell parents if you're only separating 1 or 2 times a week, it's going to take several weeks for a child who's really upset to cope and start to build that trust. Because what's happening is you are now gone and they have to trust other adults to care for them. And if they've never been asked to do this before, that is scary. And they will learn that trust the more consistent you are. There's also a lot of tools. We use a lot of like social stories, which is basically a series of pictures that tell a story of like separation. So in an early childhood family education class, ECFE class, we will often give our parents a social story that talks about school and has pictures of the classroom and the teachers and walks them through the schedule. And we keep the same schedule every single day so that the kids know what to expect. And our kids anticipate separation. And I still have kids where, in mid-November and we started in September. And I have kids who are still sad at drop-off. But because we continually do what we said we were going to do, they're slowly learning to trust that like the teachers have them and the parents come back when they say they're going to come back. The hardest thing is that pause and that hesitation, which I always tell parents, I'm like, I'm going to ask you to do something that goes against every bit of your parenting instinct. And I know that this is going to be hard for you. And I have parents who cry when they separate from their kids, and I validate that. I have been that parent before. Like, it's hard to trust somebody else with your child, but hopefully we're leaving them with people that we trust.
Okay, let's talk about sharing. We mentioned it earlier. It's usually the ignition to a lot of these big feelings. So are there any basic things we can do to start helping teaching our kids how to share things?
If I'm on the phone and my child is asking for my phone, I'm not sharing it. That's not happening. I'm in the middle of trying to schedule something and I'm not giving you my phone right now. Sharing is a concept that we just like readily want our kids to hand something over to somebody else because they wanted it. If you think about it from the adult lens, I don't just give you something because you want it every time. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, here, I'm done with it. Take it. That'd be great. And a lot of times it's like, no, I'm still playing with the train. I am building blocks. I am not interested in sharing this with you. And so oftentimes we come from this like, share it, where it's like, instead of sharing, a lot of things in our preschool classes, we're doing this a lot. We're taking turns and we're trading. Can you trade for something? If the person doesn't want to trade, can you ask them when they're done to give it to the child who wants it? This gets it's easy to do. It's not easy to do. It's easier to do in a preschool classroom when you're the teacher and you're leading a group of kids. This is so much harder to do at the library when you have the communal toys that don't belong to anybody. And it's like, we'll share it with this child who just walked over and asked for it. And so thinking about like, how do we model for our kids and advocate? I always tell parents in my classes, I'm like, you don't have to have your child share something. Like if another child walks up and you're playing with the trains and the other child reaches for them, it's okay to gently put your hand up and say, wait, we're still using it. You're kind, but you're also physically giving them a second form of communication of like, pause your hand. You can't take it. Also, if you don't have other kids, sharing is something that kids navigate often at home, which gets more complicated. But even when you're playing with your child, modeling that. Oftentimes we play with their toys with them and then our child takes it right out of our hands and we don't care because we're not emotionally invested in the toy.
Yeah.
I always tell parents, if you're having a hard time sharing, like if your child is having a hard time sharing and you want to start teaching some of these foundational skills, like put your hand up and be like, wait, I'm still using it. And I really like nonverbal, like hand gestures to go with sharing. So like physically putting your hand up to stop them from taking it and hold it closer to your body because that's what your child's going to do. They're going to take it and they're going to hold it really close to their body and turn their body away. It's that nonverbal communication. And so you're modeling the nonverbal communication with the words and we're physically saying like, I'm not done with it yet. Yeah. If you're teaching this as a parent, I'm going to play with it for 30 seconds and then be like, I'm all done. Here you go. I'm going to model sharing for you.
So now they're starting to make that connection.
Could be starting to make the connection again. All parenting things like we're like, well, we did the thing and now they should know.
Repetition.
If you don't repeat it enough, and even when you think they know, you still have to repeat it. Yeah. And so it's a constant message. But again, like back to public spaces, advocate for your child. Don't let other kids take stuff away from them. If we all did that, we'd be helping each other out. And then making sure that our child knows like when they're done, go share that with the other kid. Go trade it. Go give it to them. Classrooms have a lot of things like timers and stuff like that. Sometimes parents can implement that at home depending on how, The reality is when you have something, it's like the novelty thing and other people want it. And so just teaching our kids that like you don't always have to share. Because if you think about sharing, like always having someone come up to you and ask for something and you just give it to them because they asked, if that's the message that we're creating in a child's brain every single time, what does that look like as an adult? Like, that's not the message that I want. I don't want to just my kid to think that they have to give everything up, even if they really like it, just because someone else wants it, versus like teaching them that like, no, this is mine and I'm not interested in sharing it, which is completely fair. Communal toys are communal toys. We have to share those at some point, whether we play with it till it's time to leave and then the next child gets it, or, you know, however you navigate that. But like, there are some things that are special to us and I'm not going to share it with you. And that's okay. I don't have to share everything.
All right, we're going to switch gears again and go into routines, all the things that come with that. We've touched on these. I've mentioned dinner time. You've mentioned getting out the door. Another big one, bedtime, right? I think we've all had our ebbs and flows with bedtime. How do we reconcile some of these challenges for bedtimes, whether it's the kind of the classic like stalling for going to bed? Sometimes it's waking up at night. What are some practical strategies on navigating some of that?
If bedtime is an absolute disaster in your house right now, it's time to rethink, like, is my child overtired? Because overtired does create bigger, higher emotions and bigger tantrums, we'll call it. And so thinking about, like, are we getting to bed too late? Most families are.
Yeah, because logic would say, oh, they're super tired, they should go to bed. And that's...
if they're super tired. Like, the zoomies and the, like, big feelings is usually an indicator that you are too late for bed. And now we're just going to weather this storm and get them to bed, and we're going to do something different tomorrow. But that idea of, like, and also, what's our routine? Do we have a solid routine around bedtime? And if we don't, this is where we can really, like, make some changes. When our kids know, like, what to expect next and what the expectation is, it flows easier for them. And so thinking about, like, you can do, like, just this is what we do first, second, third, fourth.
So, like, take a bath. Then we're going to brush our teeth. Then we're going to get jammies on, whatever, right?
Whatever your routine is, keep it consistent every single day and know that your kids need, like, a couple weeks of the same routine for it to actually sink in. Just because you did it last night or for this week, they're not going to get it, but keep going. Other strategies, and this is for, like, if you have the time for this, so many parents don't have the time for this. And I only say this for those of, like, who really need something more. On a night that everyone is actually, like, composed, have some fun taking pictures of them doing each of the steps of their routine. And if you have access to technology and a printer, print out the pictures. It could be, there's so many visual schedules online. You could go real detailed or very basic of just pictures. But sometimes giving them, again, that autonomy of, like, I put up the pictures of you doing the routine, and now I'm going to pretend like I don't know what comes next. Oh, it's bedtime. The clock says this. What do we do first? Let's go look at your schedule. What's next? Like, giving them some of the control in it and bringing them into it, and then thinking about, like, how do we keep it short? It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be super long. What works for your family? Just because it's the routine doesn't mean that it can't be tweaked.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we have to make adjustments as things are happening, because maybe there's a night that we have a late activity and our bedtime routine is condensed that night because we don't have time for our normal routine on a day that we have, an hour before bedtime.
Yeah. Okay, what about potty training? We're in, like, this moment of, with our 2-year-old of, I think our oldest was, like, we often compare our kids, right?
We all
I
do.
think our oldest was potty trained at this point, and we're, like, having this discussion of, like, how do we start this, and how do we reconcile this?
Potty training, there is a lot of information on and a lot of research in different directions on. And this is one where I really encourage parents to, like, do some digging into the information available to you and figure out what is the best fit for our family and this child. Because it's so easy to compare, but it's really about, like, this person is learning something new. There is research that shows that doing it at an early age, 15 to 22 months, like, you can do it, and you have to do it in a certain way because you're teaching them a new skill. And then there's a lot of other research that says, like, more of letting the child take the lead on it and being the one to initiate. And my biggest message to parents is most children don't go to kindergarten in diapers unless there is a developmental physical reason why, or you have gotten yourself into such an intense power struggle that they're holding on to one of the things that they can hold on to. And likely, if that's the case, peer pressure will push them the rest of the way. Most of the time, that's not the case, though. And so you really have to figure out what method will work for my family. There's like the 3-day method where you take their pants off and let them run around the house naked. If you're a clean freak and the idea of your kid having an accident on your couch is absolutely horrifying to you, don't use that method. That's not a good method for you because you are teaching them something new. And if you're emotionally charged, you're not teaching them anything except for that they get a very large negative reaction from parent when they pee all over the couch.
Right.
And so figuring out like what works for me, what works for them, and picking that time. There's just so much information out there. My other piece of advice to a lot of parents is a lot of people are potty training because they have like a preschool program they want to get into, or like they need to be potty trained for this reason. And when we have a hidden agenda and that's driving our emotional response to this learning, it doesn't usually end in our favor. And pushing our kids to potty train when they're truly having a very large emotional response to it can cause problems later on. So it's this balance of like what will work, and all of the books say don't abandon once you start. I would disagree. If they're truly like, they're going to have a hard time. They're learning something new. They're going to have accidents. I mean, my child's been potty trained for over 1.5 years and had an accident recently, which caught me off guard. But I'm like, okay, that was an accident. Like, it's fine. We all have accidents. And so, but figuring out like, what is the approach that is going to work for us? And then if they're really having a hard time, take a break, stop. It's okay to come back to it. Every time they have an accident is not the time to take a break because accidents happen. But if they're like truly like having a large emotional response, it's good to rethink, like, is this really what's best for us right now? And always consult with your pediatrician, especially around like constipation. Potty training and constipation go hand in hand a lot of the time. And so like making sure your pediatrician is aware when you have concerns just to keep your child safe.
Yeah. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum with that, food. So our oldest, really picky eater. Our youngest will eat anything, which, you know, classic, right? How do we get our children to eat food? It sounds so simple. And I feel like it's this constant battle of you put something in front of them and they, you know, all right, you guys should try a little bit. And they try a little bit and they don't like it. And then we move on.
Yeah.
How do we navigate this?
My mentor, when I was student teaching, always told parents in her classes, our children have 3 rights as a human. We can't force them to sleep. We set up ideal conditions and hope that they go to bed. We can't hold them on a toilet and make them eliminate. Like that's the previous conversation. We have to figure out how to teach them that skill. And we can't shove food in their mouth and make them eat it. And unfortunately, those are the 3 things in parenting that we tend to like hyper focus on and over obsess about.
Well, it's really, the 3 things we just talked about, right?
Like the 3 things we just talked about. Like they're not in our control, but what's in our control is figuring out how to navigate them in a way to set up ideal conditions. Ellen Satter has a lot of research out there on the division of responsibility. And I really love her work because it focuses on like the adult's job and the child's job. And for an adult, you decide what food is available. If you want a well-balanced diet, you provide a well-balanced diet. If you don't want your child eating junk food, don't buy junk food. Don't have it available. It's not an option. So we provide, like, we decide what's available, and that's the first piece. We also decide when food is available. Depending on the research that you look at or who you're talking to, right now, best practice is to have set snack and meal times. So, like, food is accessible at predictable times of the day and in predictable intervals so that kids know, like, food is going to come at these times. A lot of kids like to graze. Talk to your, again, pediatrician, like, especially around food. Make sure you're consulting with your pediatrician. But thinking about, like, if I let my child graze, what are they grazing on? if they're grazing on carbs and junk, like the carbohydrates that like quickly wear off in their body and have high energy, they're going to be hungry more often versus like focusing on like higher protein fiber type snacks that have like keep them full for longer. If they're snacking in between meals, they're not going to be hungry for the meal. And so like really looking at like, when is food available to my child and is this working for my family right now? For some people, kids just graze all day and like the things that are available are moderately healthy and like parents are okay with that. And that's great. Some parents are like, oh, the goldfish need to go. Or my child who like overindulges in applesauces. Like there's a limit on those to how many you can have in a day. And so figuring out like, how does that look for our family? Like what is offered, when is offered, and then we decide as the adult where food is offered. Do we only eat at the table? Are there other spaces in our home that are available? Do you have easy access to food all the time? Do you not? My biggest like safety plug on that is letting kids walk around with food does like increase their choking risk.
Yeah.
So recommendation is to be seated so that their bodies are safe because they do have a higher risk of choking in general. It's also tricky because adults tend to walk around the house eating.
Back
so
to
we're not
modeling
actually
behavior,
modeling
right?
behavior, which we really have to think about, but thinking about like what, when, and where. After that, our job is over.
Yeah.
And this is where we like to continue, but it's no longer our responsibility. Our kids get to decide what they eat and then how much they eat. So like, am I going to eat what has been offered to me? Yes or no? And how much of it do I need? We really want our kids, if we really look at like hunger and full cues from an early age and moving forward, like teaching our kids to recognize what their body's telling them and then trusting that their body is saying that they are done. I'm trying to think. I think it's the American Academy of Pediatrics that has a really interesting chart that has listed amounts of like how much a serving size is for a toddler. And when I show it in my classes, parents are often just like, whoa, that's a lot less food than I thought they needed. And they've been trying to like push their child to eat more when it's like actually too much
Clean
food.
your plate, yeah.
Yeah. And so thinking about like what's the message that we're giving around food? I always tell parents when it comes to meals, make sure you have one safe food on their plate, something that you know they likely will eat. It is very common for kids to eat something one day and the next day say that it's disgusting and gross. Like there's nothing wrong with your child. That's normal. It's also normal for kids to like have a time of day that they're more hungry. And so they'll eat more at one meal and less at another meal. It's also normal to like look at their food intake over a 3-day period to a week period. Like how much are they consuming over a longer period of time rather than fixating on like individual meals? Yeah. Because there's times that adults are more hungry than others. Like our bodies are our bodies, they change. And so being respectful of like, I have provided you food. Know that you've done your job. If you remember the food pyramid when we were growing up, that's not a thing. It's now a plate. And looking at like we offer something from each of the food groups. And then our job is done. Having that safe food gives your child something to hopefully still like nourish their body. And it gives you the peace of mind of like, I fed them and they ate something so that we can walk away from the table. The thing about like the meal time that I really like is the messaging of like, if they walk away from this meal and they haven't eaten anything or very little, I know and they know when the next opportunity to eat will be. So if they come to you in 10 minutes and they're like, I'm hungry, you can let them know. Some of like the messaging out there is like, kitchen's closed, there's no food accessible. Next time we eat is at this time. Like they know that. Or some parents will save the food and bring it back out if they're still hungry. This is where I want parents really just to like think about what works for your family and what's the message I'm sending my child when I make these choices. But it's not our job to put the food in their body. It's our job to offer it. I will say Feeding Littles has really good information out there on like portions and just thinking about like if we start with very little amounts of food on their plate, like a small piece of broccoli and a small like piece of like one slice of a clementine and a very small bite-sized piece of like whatever the protein is, starting with small amounts on their food is less overwhelming. Like if we go to gatherings and we fill up our plate at like a it's overwhelming sometimes when we go to social events and sit down. It's like a potluck style. And I'm like, wow, I have too much food on my plate. Our kids usually don't have control over what goes on their plate. So start small. It's less overwhelming, and then they're more likely to try it. And if they don't try it and you have a hard time with food waste, it's a good peace of mind of like, there's not a whole serving of food going in the garbage can or on the floor for the dog to eat. It's like right. Just a piece. And so then we have that opportunity. There's also a lot of really great people out there who are putting good information out around food and like creating this positive message around food, because we all are going to eat for the rest of our lives, and we want to help our kids like really figure out like what makes my body feel good and what doesn't make my body feel good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we close, there's a lot of great information. I feel inspired. I think one thing that we feel, a lot of people listening might feel, is this pressure to be perfect. Mm-hmm. How do we let go of that?
There's no such thing as a perfect parent. We were handed this human at some point in our life, and we didn't get an instruction manual, and we probably had very little training in it. And I will argue, even if you had training in it, no one told you the emotional like connection you were going to have with this person. That takes all of your training completely out the window. And so really, like, what is good enough, and what's the overall message that I want my child to have when they look back on their childhood and reflect on how I did as a parent? Like, what do I want the messages what do I want them to take away from this? And so really we're going for good enough. We are people. We have good days. Have bad days. We're really focusing on like, how do we have a connection and a positive relationship with our child? And if that's guiding us, hopefully we're doing good enough in that moment. Parent burnout is huge right now. And like, there's a ton of information out there. Really, burnout is coming from the fact that we are doing more jobs than any other, generations before us. The workload, the demand, the mental load of all the extra things that we have to do to keep our household and family running is real. And then we have way too much access to information to make us like second guess ourselves. And so thinking about like, how do I connect with my child? How do I have those positive moments? How do I find time for myself? Something that does not revolve around your family. You can love them as much as you want, but if you really lose yourself in this process, you're going to have a higher risk of burnout. So like, how do you help find those moments? And this really taps into like the resources that we have available to us. If you are a transplant family and don't have anybody nearby and don't have a support system that you've built yet, if you have a partner trying to figure out how you guys can carve out time for each person to have time for themselves, time together, it starts adding up on your plate. Talk about mental load. Some resources are saying like schedule something on the calendar, just like you would every other activity, and then hold to it, unless, sometimes there's situations, but really try and hold to it. And then thinking about like, what is it that fills my cup? And sometimes filling our cup is really like doing things with our kids. If we really love coloring and our child really loves coloring, carve time out of your day to sit down and color with your child. You're doing two things at once. It doesn't have to be on our own, but sometimes we do need that on our own time. But it really means like, and especially for like single parents who don't have a partner to help them, really figuring out, how am I going to fill my own bucket in small ways? And maybe it's getting up and drinking your coffee hot. I'm not sure what that feels like, but I've been told it's really good.
Okay, so if people are listening and they're, they feel, like I said, like inspired, maybe they want to learn more, maybe they want to do more, maybe they want to make connections, maybe they want to talk to you more. Mm-hmm. How do people get involved with the work you're doing?
I lead early childhood family education classes, so ECFE. We are a parent-child class, so you sign up, you come once a week, and you get to hang out with me or my colleagues. Most programs for 1-year-olds and above is a separation component, so you get time in the classroom playing with your child. We do very specific child activities, and then we get a little bit of time away. The kids play in the classroom with the teacher. They get to have peer interactions, and we go talk about parenting stuff. So ECFE classes, most districts have them. Finding the one that fits your family doesn't have to be in district, but if you live in district, you also get to meet other parents who are parenting the same age group. My goal is always to make connections there. if you have a busy life and that doesn't fit in with you, but you really need to talk to somebody, we have parent coaching sessions. So if you go to the Early Learning website and go to register, under the early childhood family education component, there's or I think it might be the family and parent section, but there's a way to get parent coaching. And so you can sign up for that, and that's a free opportunity. There's 3 parent educators. So when you sign up, one of us will reach out to you and set up a time to just figure out what's going on. How can we help you and support you? Give you a couple ideas.
The website is wayzataschools.org/early learning. There's an ECFE tab at the top as well as other information. And then there's a register tab that will allow you to register for some of those ECFE classes. So Naomi, thank you for joining us. And for everyone listening that wants to learn more, go check out the website. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.